Hi students, and welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian and I'm streaming to you from beautiful Budapest. I hope everybody is having a fantastic weekend so far, staying healthy and staying strong. In this class, everyone, we are looking at some speaking part 3 questions. I'm going to give you some tips for a band 9. Let me brighten up our day a little bit more here. See that the screen's a little bit dark, maybe like that. Okay. All right. This lesson is presented to you by aehelp.com. For academic IELTS, visit us there and join thousands of students who learn IELTS with us every single day to get those higher band scores. For the general IELTS, check us out at gieltshelp.com. On both of our websites, we have lots of help to improve your speaking, including free speaking with other students with video chat. This is what our academic IELTS website looks like here with the blue background. You can click that big red button to join the premium package. Let me just darken this up a bit so you can see it a little bit clearer. In fact, I'll show you where you can practice your speaking. So if you go to your My Student account up at the top here after you log in, then you will have access to computer-based exams, lesson videos, audio CDs, lots more, and you'll have access to student partner speaking, and you can even book speaking interview practice sessions with professionals, including myself. So you click on that student partner speaking, and then you'll be able to find some other students that are looking for people to chat with. So here you see Dimitri and Uzman waiting for somebody to video or audio chat with them. Okay, so check that out. Same idea for general IELTS. It's green background, big red button to join the premium package. And again, in your My Student account, you will find other students for IELTS to practice your speaking with. Okay, so make sure to check that out. That's absolutely free. You can even use that through the free demo version of the website. So check it out. Okay, all right. And thank you, Rohan, for the Happy Halloween jack-o'-lanterns. A carved pumpkin with a face is called a jack-o'-lantern. Okay. Dipti says, today I got 5.5 in my speaking in my mock test. How can I improve my speaking to get 7.5 in both reading and writing and 8 in listening? Okay. Oh, you got 7.5. Okay, you need to speak lots more, Dipti. It sounds like you need to speak more. You need to be original. And joining this class, Dipti, is one of the right ways to do that. Okay. So if anybody has questions like Dipti, you can always send me an email to adrian@aehelp.com, and I will gladly answer your questions about IELTS or our products. Now, after this class, the next class will be on November 4th, which is Wednesday, and that will be a speaking part 1 class. So that's our usual schedule. You can also see our schedule on our YouTube channel in the community posts. So make sure to check that out. Okay. All right. So part 3 follows after the cue card in part 2, and it's usually connected to the topic of the cue card. Okay, so whatever you talked about in the cue card, the topic of part 3 will be something similar to that. Okay, these days they'll even ask you a couple questions about what you said for part 2. So in part 3, most importantly, okay, so be original. So don't use, when I say be original, it means don't use leading expressions and idioms unnecessarily. Okay, so please don't say things like, thank you for giving me the opportunity, or, well, there are negatives and benefits to this. only say that if it actually makes sense in the context, okay? But don't just say sentences or expressions that you saw online because somebody told you that you're going to get a high band score if you say that in the speaking interview, okay? IELTS examiners don't like that, and it's actually in their marking sheet that you lose marks if somebody is using unnecessary expressions and talking off topic, okay? Is that clear for everyone? So please don't do that, okay? All right. Ian says, I'm coming here because I love your accent. Yeah, I speak West Coast Canadian English, okay? Nikhil says, yeah, I got that. Okay, Victor Oas, there's all our members. Great to see you all. Fantastic. So be original. Don't use leading expressions and idioms unnecessarily, okay? Make sure, okay, to give specific answers, okay? To do that, well, use the question in your answer. Okay, so we'll practice that for this first one here. So we'll practice using the question in our answer. So here the IELTS examiner might say, okay, that's the end of part 2. Now we will continue with part 3. For part 3, I will ask you some more questions related to the topic of part 2. Let's talk about historical figures. What qualities do most historical figures share in common? Okay, so what you want to do here is you want to use that question in your answer, okay, and paraphrase it as much as possible. If you can't paraphrase it, it's okay, but still use it, all right? We're going to do writing next week. I saw that question from one of our students. I think it was Ayush, and Ayush will do writing next week, okay? I'm sure we'll have a couple of writing classes in there next week, all right? So Sarani says, historical figures mostly have very qualified achievements, education, they're patriotic, humanity, and sciences in common. Seni, use the question, okay? So share in common, if you're thinking about this, you might come up with the word similarity or similar, okay? Qualities, characteristics, okay? Those are the words that you should be thinking about. Historical figures, okay? So famous people in history. Okay, so that's your paraphrasing. That's what you should be doing when you're giving the answer, and use the question. I'd like to see some answers where you're using the question. Okay, students don't do that enough and they go off topic. Also, I find students give much better answers when they use the question. Okay, Un says, I think that historical figures have fairly similar qualities like bricks, rocks, and woods because they all have meaningful historical knowledge and information that reflects their lives of prior society. And I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that, okay? So if you think of some historical figures like Leonardo da Vinci, Abraham Lincoln, Alexander Graham Bell, Albert Einstein, think about what these people have in common, okay? Okay, historical figures means people. People. Okay? Keep that in mind. All right. Kevin says, kings who fought against racial discrimination until his last breath as well. These people are solution-oriented as they seek measures to remedy thorny social problems rather than complaining. A common trait among revered historical people. There we go, Kevin. Now you're using the question in your second comment. Okay, so Kevin says, A common trait among revered historical people is altruism and selflessness, reflected through their undying devotion to tasks which are for the betterment of society, like Martin Luther King and Leonardo da Vinci. Very nice, Kevin. That's your Band 9 answer. Okay, that's how you do it. That's how you use the question, give an explanation, and then give an example. Okay. Nick Hill says the attributes of most historical constructs is that it's aesthetic in the past generation. Yeah, because I think some of you are trying to translate figure, Nick Hill, and you're translating figures not as people in this case. But in this case, it's tricky. It actually means people. Historical figures means people in history. A little bit tricky, I know. Okay? So here it doesn't mean like buildings or statues. All right? That's not what we're referring to here. It's a little bit tricky. In the official IELTS, they might say something like, let's talk about historical figures, famous people in history. So they might give you a little bit extra help in the official IELTS by saying famous people in history, just so that you can figure out what that means, okay? All right. Lepay Yan says, the most striking similarities of historical figures are that they had done something significant and changed people's lives, have improved or altered people's thinking. Lepay, good. Okay, you're on the right track. Good to use the question. Okay. Rajveer says the key properties that most of the historical figures share are honesty and dedication. Okay, yeah, so lots of good answers there. Now you're coming up with them. Such individuals do not lie to their public and put 100% effort in any activity that they do. Like Mahatma Gandhi and Nelson Mandela are known for their diligence. Absolutely. Not everybody agrees with their work, but nobody will argue that they were extremely diligent, Rajveer. Very good. Okay. So the characteristics that many famous that are similar among many famous historical people are dedication and achievement. These individuals were able to accomplish significant tasks in their lifetimes by never giving up in their beliefs, and eventually they were recognized by many people across time. Such people include Abraham Lincoln and Saint Teresa. Okay. There we go. So, here we go. Repeat after me. So this is speaking, so make sure to speak and repeat. Okay, so speak and repeat. All right, here we go. Let's talk about historical figures, historical people. What qualities do most historical figures share in common? The characteristics that are similar among many famous historical people are dedication and achievement. These individuals were able to accomplish significant tasks in their lifetime by never giving up in their beliefs and eventually they were recognized by many people across time. Such people include Abraham Lincoln and Saint Teresa, okay, who was formerly known as Mother Teresa. All right, so answer, explanation, example, and very importantly, again, I want to emphasize that to stay on topic, use the question in your answer, okay? If you're not sure what historical figures means, you can ask the examiner. So you can say, by historical figures, do you mean historical buildings? And they might say, no, I mean people, okay? So you could say something like, by historical figures, do you mean famous buildings from the past? If that's what you're thinking. And then the examiner will likely say, no, I mean famous people. Okay. All right. So you can do that. And at the least, they will repeat the question. Okay. Okay, let's try that again. So use the question, think about your answer, think about your explanation, give me an example. Okay. And really pay attention to paraphrasing quantitative language, connecting your ideas. Okay, here we go. Why is it important for society to immortalize some people in history? So why is it important for society to immortalize some people in history? Okay. Seni says it is important to immortalize historical figures so that their struggle is kept alive and their values can be known widely throughout history, such as Ahimsa declared by Mahatma Gandhi spread widely. Okay, Seni, good. All right, good. And you flowed into an example there nicely. All right. Yeah, Ayush, you can book speaking sessions with me. So just send me an email if you're curious about that. Okay. You can do that through the website, as I showed you. Okay. Hardik Sutaria says, of course, society immortalizes such great people because they give us direction on the right path to help achieve success. Sardar Patel has given many people the power to unify. Okay, Hardik, good. I made a couple of corrections there. Take notice of those. All right. Mohammed says, I think that it helps people to have pride, especially about their past and their culture. This helps the outside world to become more familiar with the country's heritage and learn some good information about history, or the country's history. Okay, Mohammed, you have to collect your thoughts a little bit there. I really had to work to make sense of what you wrote there. Okay. Moria says it is essential to commemorate. Very nice use of vocabulary, Moria. Commemorate instead of immortalize. So it is essential to immortalize some famous people in history because learning from the past helps us prevent many problems. Some ancient subjects like philosophy and science provides tools and methods. So it's important to remember the words of great philosophers such as Aristotle, Socrates, and others. All right, I like it, Moria. I'm going to use that. So it is essential to commemorate certain people in history so that we learn of their achievements and adopt a moral compass for humanity. In this way, we can mature to be both better individuals and a better society. Abraham Lincoln is commemorated because of his belief in equality and abolishing slave labor. Okay, perfect. There we go. Thank you for the tip, Moria, and thank you for the paraphrasing. Here we go. So why is it important for society to immortalize some people in history? It is essential to commemorate certain people in history so that we learn of their achievement and adopt a moral compass for humanity. In this way, we can mature to be both better individuals and a better society. Abraham Lincoln is commemorated because of his belief in equality and abolishing slave labor, above and beyond being one of the great American presidents, right? Notice also how here I used Abraham Lincoln as an example of a person in history. So in the next answer, I decided, hey, I can use Abraham Lincoln for this again, because obviously Abraham Lincoln is remembered as one of the great presidents, early presidents of U.S. history. And of course, he's very famous because he was the president that said, hey, slave labor is not okay. People should be treated with equal rights. So that's largely why he's commemorated. Okay. All right. Good job, everyone. Some nice answers. I've kind of skimmed through Juan Pablo and Romaine. I've skimmed through your answers, and they're looking good. So keep going. If I miss your answer, don't worry about it. I'll catch it the next time. Okay. All right. Here we go. Next question. Is all information about historical figures accurate? Why or why not? Why or why not? So, is all information about historical figures accurate? Why or why not? You can answer yes, you can answer no. Just be original. There's no right and wrong. It's just giving a good answer that's important here. All right? All right, Fennel says, information about certain historical figures were best at the time as it was generally based on the situation. However, there is information which is taken into application in today's world. What do you mean, Fennel? So that second part of your answer, I kind of get it, but you need to explain it. Having clear explanations is super important. Remember, students, the answer is only as good as your explanation, okay? This is my next tip here, all right? So your answer is only as good as your explanation. Remember what I said the other day, okay? Coherence in the speaking section is the most important component of your band score. Okay. Good coherence, especially in part 3, comes from your explanation and secondarily from your example. Okay, so you must strive to have a good explanation. If you feel that you don't have a good explanation, then backtrack. Okay, so what I mean to say by this, or another way I can explain this is, so sometimes we feel like, I said something, but even if I said it in my own language, it might not make enough sense in this case. So if you feel like you're not making enough sense, you're not clear enough, okay, so therefore, if you feel that you are not being clear enough, backtrack. Okay? What I mean to say is, or another way to think about this is, So use these kinds of sentences to backtrack and then give a second, third explanation. Don't overspeak, okay? So don't get carried away, because then the examiner will just think, okay, they're not making sense. I'm just going to go to the next question. But if you backtrack once or twice to try to add some clarity to your explanations, that's absolutely okay. And in fact, it's a good idea if you feel like you're not making enough sense. Okay? Hopefully that's clear. All right? Okay, Mashi, a fellow traveler, says, generally speaking, most of the information is considered to be correct for most of the references, insisting that the information might be incorrect information as well as there's controversial. Mashi, I'm not sure what you're saying. That would be very confusing for me. Okay, so even though you have lots of vocabulary there, relatively good grammar, the coherence score is like a band 4. I just don't understand what you're saying. So you have to be really careful with that. Okay. All right. Shokh Jahan Abdul Hamidov says, it is not a good idea to believe in every information about someone who lived in the past, as we don't have accurate information about them, because today not every information is trustworthy. Okay, and why is that? So why? Why is information not trustworthy? Okay, what happens to information as it becomes older or as it gets manipulated? Okay, so what happens to information? Amrita says, no, I don't think so. I don't think that all the information about historical figures is correct, because it comes from various sources, such as books and different authors and videos on YouTube. Yeah, and okay, and why? So various sources, that's a good start to an explanation, Amrita. So one reason is different people tell history from different perspectives. Absolutely. So that's a good start. There are other reasons as well. Okay. Lucas says, well, although there's a lot of historical information that took place in the past, I think I have to say no. Not every piece of information about history is 100% accurate, because, let me try to find the end of that, Lucas. Because there are certain hidden facts that are publicly considered to have a negative influence on society. Okay, Lucas, that's really good, all right? And maybe give an example of that, right? So reveal the dark side of some characters, right? Okay. All right. So is all information about historical figures accurate? Why or why not? I definitely don't believe that all of the historical data about famous people in the past is accurate, because it is manipulated throughout time by various interested parties. Some political groups may make an individual out to be a hero, like the way the Soviets idealized Stalin. However, later on, the same individual may be depicted as a villain, such as the liberal Russians who believe that Stalin caused much suffering to citizens. For citizens. Okay. All right. So here we go. Answer, explain, example. In the IELTS exam, they do not judge you for your opinions. Don't curse, don't swear, be polite, but they will not judge you, okay? So they're there to just assess your English. Here is my response. Repeat after me. Is all information about historical figures accurate? Why or why not? I definitely don't believe that all of the historical data about famous people in the past is accurate because it is manipulated throughout time by various interested parties. Some political groups may make an individual out to be a hero, like the way Soviets idealized Stalin. However, later on, the same individual may be depicted as a villain, such as the liberal Russians who believe that Stalin caused much suffering for citizens. Okay? So answer, explain, example. Now I'm using natural English. I'm speaking at a fairly rapid pace, okay? If you're missing what I'm saying, don't panic, don't worry about it. The video is recorded. You can go back later and practice these words, practice these sentences, okay? All right. Let's move to the next question. How have historical figures impacted modern times? Okay. How have historical figures impacted modern times? Give me a nice full sentence for that one. Un says, I think that historical figures have influenced society substantially, especially the way modern people behave and their lifestyles, like patriotism and dedication are some common traits that people share because of the influence of who? Un. Okay, finish the idea. It seems like it's an unfinished idea. I know you probably ran out of space in the comment, but again, don't overspeak Un, so try to capsulize, try to be concise, that idea into that 200 characters, okay? All right. It's good grammar On. Good use of words. Just get the idea out, okay? Get the idea out. Kevin says, historical people have certainly raised the standards of modern lives regardless of the field that they contributed to, whether it's in healthcare or communication. Had it not been for their groundbreaking inventions, such as Graham Bell with the telephone, communication would have been much slower, causing less work to be finished in time and a lower level of prosperity for nations. Yet to see, Kevin, yet to see. We'll see whether technology will be a good or a bad in the grand scheme of things, but nevertheless, Kevin, I'm not here to judge your answer. I think it's a great answer. I think it's a band 9 as long as you say that nice and fluent. Okay? As long as you say that fluently, it's a band 9. Okay? Juan Pablo Avila says they have influenced in politics, culture, and society because they often set a bar for social and political movements when it came to looking for justice and the betterment of society. Beautiful answer, Juan. Give me an example. So who would be a person that has clearly had an impact in cultural movement? Okay, sure you can come up with 1 or 2 people, right? Good, Ayush. I'll check that out later. For Dobbs says, some individuals' arts and innovations have been influencing modern times. The art of Leonardo has given a lot of money to the Italians, and without the innovations of the past, it is difficult to live like, okay, and for Dobbs, you could actually keep going with your Leonardo da Vinci example because Da Vinci was not only a painter but also an inventor, and his drawings have had a great influence on inventions, including the invention of the airplane. Okay, he was definitely a futurist as well. Okay. Victor says, famous people in history have positively influenced society nowadays because lots of individuals get motivated and gain knowledge by learning from their works in the past. Very good, Victor. I like your answer. I like your explanation. Get that example in there. Okay, we want that example, right? Now, this question is in present perfect. I saw somebody, couldn't read the Korean, but I saw somebody from Korea say that it's a bit difficult. Part 3 is difficult, students. So remember that IELTS is a progressive exam. By the time you get to these questions in part 3, they're testing for upper intermediate. If you're thinking European English standard, it's C1, C2 level is what they're looking for here. They're looking for band 7, 8, 9. Okay, so it's definitely going to get more and more challenging. If you are speaking well, be prepared that they're going to ask you some challenging questions to test your knowledge, okay? That's how you know you're probably doing a good job in the speaking, is they're asking you stranger and more difficult questions near the end. If they're not doing that, it's probably because they've realized that you're a band 6 and they don't want to, make you feel uncomfortable by asking you a really difficult question where you just go, what did you say? Okay, so, all right. Again, I can't read the Korean, but I can read the answer. I believe that historical data has had a great influence on individuals and the government, because when we judge the government or administration, we tend to compare their performances to past people in history. Okay, it's a good idea. I had to make a couple of adjustments there. So this is present perfect, have impacted. So we want to make sure that we're paraphrasing that and we're using that grammar. Okay, again, emphasizing the importance of using the question in your answer. Okay, so famous people of the past have had tremendous influence on today's world. They have shaped cultural and political perspectives, as well as the innovations in everyday use. Without the Wright brothers, we may still not have airplanes to quickly get us around the world. Without Bell, we may still not have a working telephone, and without Lincoln, we may still have more caste societies. Okay. Of course, I'm always pushing your language, so if you're seeing new words, if you're like, what's that? What's a caste society? A caste society is a society where you have people divided by their social class, much more so than we do now. So if you think about kings, queens, barons, nobles, aristocracy or aristocrats, peasant class, that would have been a caste society. Okay, these days we're not considered caste society in most parts of the world. Okay, so if you see new words, write them down. All right, here we go. How have historical figures impacted modern times? Famous people of the past have had tremendous influence on today's world. They have shaped. Notice this. Have had. Have shaped. So I'm showing the examiner multiple times that I got you. You use present perfect. I can use present perfect in my answer. Let's do this. Okay? So have shaped cultural and political perspectives as well as the innovations in everyday use. Without the Wright brothers, we may still not have airplanes to quickly get us around the world. Without Bell, we may still not have a working telephone. And without Lincoln, we may still have more caste societies. Okay? All right, so answer, explain, example, use the grammar of the question, use the question in your answer. That's another reason why it's important to use the question in your answers, not only to stay on topic, but also to remind you of the importance of the grammar in the question that's being reflected. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, the examiner says, can you give a couple of examples? And I just did, so I might add to it. But because I gave some examples, probably at this point the examiner is not going to say, can you give a couple examples? I gave the examiner the example of the Wright brothers, Bell, and also Lincoln, Alexander Graham Bell. So they're probably just going to go on to the next set of questions. And if you're doing a good job and you have good fluency, you'll possibly get this kind of a shift where you're still on the topic of part 2, but it's a little bit of a shift in the topic of part 2. So something like, let's talk about school materials. We can probably guess that part 2 was about famous people in history taught in school. So let's talk about a person in that you learned about in school, a famous historical person that you learned about in school. So the first questions are about the historical people. The next one is about school materials. Okay, so let's talk about school materials. Who decides the materials that are taught in schools and why? That's kind of an interesting question. So answer that one for me. So who decides the materials that are taught in schools and why? Beckjan says it varies from country to country. I think the most common people responsible are those working in higher positions in the government, like the Ministry of Education in countries like Kazakhstan and Russia, whereas in Finland, every teacher has to come up with their own curriculum. Very nice answer, Beckjan. I like it. I love the inclusion of Ministry of Education. That's fantastic. Ferdov says psychologists, logotheps, experienced teachers in a wide variety of spheres, in my opinion, create school subjects as they are really good professionals and they know what materials are needed to be taught. Beautiful answer, Ferdovs. I love the passive. I love the combination of different experts. Very nice. Okay, great answers. Good job, students. You deserve a pat on the back. Finishing the week strong. Good for you. Kevin Bowie says it's the public schools were it. Okay, sorry, Kevin, one more time. Kevin says if it's a public school we're considering, then the government will have the decision-making power as they operate and finance the system. But if it's a private institution, then the school, specifically the academic department, will have the autonomy to compile and implement their own curricula. Not curriculums, curricula. Okay, curricula is the plural, Kevin. Otherwise, it's a beautiful answer. Okay, as far as I know, we don't have a regular plural for curriculum. Like curriculums, it's curricula. Okay, it's an irregular plural. Tricky one, I know. All right, very good. Nicely done. Un says, I believe the Minister of Education should be the one who decides what to include in the school curriculum. However, they should consult the public first to end up with an optimal education system for students. Very nice, Un. I changed a couple words to make it even more specific. Okay. All right. Nicely done, students. Really good job. Rajveer, Ois, beautiful work as well. Okay. So, I'm not exactly sure who is in absolute control of educational content. But in the case of public schools, I would assume that the Ministry of Education and the professionals working there, such as psychologists, should be able to spell that since I myself am a psychologist, such as psychologists and pedagogists are the ones mostly responsible, with, of course, some input from the teachers as well. Okay. All right. I actually think some of you had an even better answer than I have, but hey, I'm not perfect. I think I get a band 9, but I think some of you can give better answers some of the time. Absolutely. Here we go. Repeat after me. Who decides the materials that are taught in schools and why? I'm not exactly sure who is in absolute control of educational content, but in the case of public schools, I would assume that the Ministry of Education and the professionals working there, such as psychologists and pedagogists, are the ones mostly responsible, with, of course, some input from the teachers and maybe parents as well. Okay, students, fantastic job. That's all the time I have for today. Nevertheless, I will be back on November 4th, Wednesday at the usual time. You can check out our schedule on our channel's community posts. I will have that up later today or tomorrow, so you can put that into your calendar if we're enjoying these classes and you feel like joining me for some more next week. A great way to follow along with these classes, to get an inside look at the strategies, the psychology that we use to help students prepare for the IELTS, to improve their communication, is definitely by going to aehelp.com, using our premium package, going through the interactive course, or for general IELTS students, gieltshelp.com, and then you can really get a good global and specific idea of the nature of our teaching style and the way that our curriculum works and the way that we convey information to you. Thank you so much. I loved looking at your answers and reading them out, making some corrections. You had some fantastic responses. Keep that up. Keep practicing. Use the speaking on the websites to practice with other students. And if you have questions, just send them to me. I will definitely take a look at those emails. A couple of you said you sent. Have a fantastic rest of your weekend. You're all beautiful, smart people. Think critically, question the world around you. Much love from the heart of Europe, Budapest. Bye for now. I'm Adrian.